After being repudiated by the Kui clan of Qinghe, I became the laughingstock of the entire capital. My father found me a disgrace, wishing I would sicken and die. In the bitter cold of the 12th lunar month, my stepmother, harsh and cruel, punished me to kneel in the snow. A high fever raged within me, unrelenting. It was then that the lame young master of the Zhu clan, known throughout the city as the Smiling Yama, passed by, desperate and at the end of my rope. I clung to the hem of his robe and asked, trembling, "Will you marry me?" He glanced at me, lazily. He held out his hand, pulling me out of the mire. That was his answer. The entrance to the girls' academy was bustling with people, yet I was openly turned away, forbidden to enter. Even half a month earlier, I had still been the capital's premier talented young lady, the top student at the academy. But I had been repudiated by the legitimate eldest son of the Kui clan of Qinghe himself, who had personally delivered the letter of repudiation. I had done nothing wrong, I simply failed to please him, that was all. Yet this was only the beginning. I no longer received a single invitation to any noble ladies' banquets. The capital's noble daughters feared being associated with me in the slightest. My father was ashamed to let me leave the mansion, hoping I would waste away and die at home. Even the girls' academy, which had once taken pride in me, struck my name from its rolls. The academy's supervisor stood on the steps, her voice cold and unyielding as she repeated, "Any woman who has been repudiated shall not re-enter the academy. Miss Jiang, please leave." The Great Wei Girls' Academy was strict. Never before had a student been repudiated after enrollment. I was the first. Mockery and murmurs surrounded me. If I had been repudiated like this, I would have hanged myself with a white silk sash long ago. How dare she show her face here repeatedly? If she hadn't lacked virtue or talent, how could the Kui clan have come in person to break the engagement? Who knows how much of her past talent was real, and how much was pretense? I stood in the wind, so thin I seemed ready to be blown over at any moment. The supervisor ordered my belongings at the academy to be returned to me in full, from start to finish. I was not allowed to set foot inside the institution. It was not until the last item, a green silk chain, was handed to me that I spoke, pressing my lips together. I took it, my face as pale as paper, and asked, "Master, what did I do wrong?" The supervisor had once taught me chain, and had always been one of the masters who most admired my talent and diligence. She looked at me for a long time. Suddenly, her rigid face trembled slightly, and she said, "You did nothing wrong. It is simply that the world has always been harsh on women." Tears nearly spilled from my eyes. I had known since childhood that I would marry the legitimate eldest son of the Kui clan of Qinghe. This was the last protection left to me by my late mother. Even though my father disliked me and my stepmother was cruel, I had a foundation to stand on. For the Kui clan's sake alone, they would not dare to mistreat me further. The Kui clan of Qinghe was a true noble family of centuries standing. Their legitimate eldest son, Kui Jiao, was as brilliant as the sun and moon, unorthodox and exceptionally outstanding. I knew that becoming the mistress of the Kui clan would be extremely difficult, no room for sloth or complacency. I had enrolled in the girls' academy and become the undisputed talented young lady of the capital. I could manage household finances, and never made a mistake at any banquet, large or small. I had spent countless days and nights perfecting qin, qi, shu, hua, the four arts of a noble lady, as well as virtue, speech, demeanor, and needlework. Finally, I had gained the Kui clan's approval. The Kui clan's grand old lady had personally come to see me, nodding her acquiescence to the marriage. But I had never imagined that Kui Jiao had never intended to marry me. He said, "Miss Jiang, I do not wish to marry a woman who is no different from all the other women of the Kui clan." You see, in his eyes, I was just such a rigid, decadent noble young lady, indistinguishable from any other. I had wanted to be the mistress of the Kui clan, but I had never thought that all Kui Jiao wanted was a wife he loved, I had been striving in the wrong direction all along. This ending was no accident. But Kui Jiao, what of all the years I loved you? The moment I received the Kui clan's letter of repudiation, I knew my life was over. No man would dare marry a woman repudiated by the Kui clan. After returning from the academy, I fell ill with a fever, my consciousness muddled. I dreamed of my mother's final moments. She had lingered on her sickbed for 3 years. My father had long since taken a new wife and had never once come to see her, not even in her last moments. When only I held her hand, the room was cold and desolate. She made me memorize her words, one by one. Your father is fickle. Your stepmother will surely mistreat you. You must plan for yourself in all things. Enter the girls' academy, learn virtue and skills, and understand reason. Endure a little longer, marry into the Kui clan, and everything will be better. Endure a little longer, and it will be over. But mother, you never told me what to do if Kui Jiao refused to marry me. On the 3rd day of my fever, the old nanny still could not get a token from my stepmother to summon a doctor. My father forbade anyone from treating me, and forbade me from sending word to the outside. Following my father's orders, my stepmother made me kneel in the snow every night to reflect on my mistakes. Without treatment, my condition grew worse by the day. On the 5th day, even my fingertips burned. When I coughed, blood came up. It dawned on me belatedly. My father wanted me to die of illness. The Jiang clan had no use for a repudiated daughter that day. Distinguished guests came to the mansion. Lanterns blazed brightly. The stewards had begun preparations 3 days earlier, and faint music drifted through the air. Snow fell heavily from the sky. I alternated between chills and fever, burning so intensely I could barely think. The snowy night was quiet, lit only by a few lonely lanterns, until the sound of footsteps crunching through snow echoed. A crimson official robe fell before my eyes. The lame young master of the Zhu clan, the smiling Yama, stood before me, looking down at me. Instinctively, I grabbed the hem of his robe, as if clutching a lifeline. My throat tightened, and I spoke, abrupt and desperate, through tears. I asked, "Will you marry me? I can paint the finest paintings. I can manage your mansion. I only have a bad reputation." His attendant stood frozen. Silent as cicadas in winter, he knelt down and studied me for a moment. The light from the lanterns hanging on the corridor spilled over his face, making him seem surprisingly warm, nothing like the ruthless, cold man he was known to be. Zhu Gutting held out his hand, lazy and unhurried. "Pulling me out of the mire," that was his answer. I had never imagined I would ever be involved with Zhu Gutang. I was a secluded, noble young lady. He was a close minister of the emperor. A hungry wolf in the court, everyone feared and loathed his cruel methods. Zhu Gutang's reputation was as bad as it could get, but he had saved my life. I looked down at my hand, my palm still seeming to burn. I did not understand where I had found the courage to clutch his robe that day. I had just recovered from my illness when my father summoned me to the front hall. The last time I had been there was when the Kui clan had come to repudiate the marriage. But this time was different. The hall was piled high with betrothal gifts, the boxes marked with the Zhu clan's seal. Lifting the lids revealed a dazzling display of wealth. The matchmaker had long since left. My father sat on the upper seat, his face dark with anger. As soon as I entered, a teacup came crashing toward me, shattering less than an inch from my side. "How dare you entice Zhu Gutang? He is ruthless, with countless political enemies. Do you want to kill our entire family? First repudiated, then carrying on a secret liaison. I have lived a life of integrity. How could I have raised such a daughter? He will come to the mansion later. You will personally refuse this marriage to his face." The hem of my skirt was soaked with tea. I spoke softly. "May I ask, Father, how should I refuse Zhu Gutang?" My stepmother, sitting beside him, took up the words. She had once been only a concubine, rising to the position of legal wife only after slowly wearing my mother down to death. over the past 10 years, she had given birth to a son and a daughter, living a smooth and prosperous life. Only I remembered the way my mother's eyes had remained open even in death. She smiled softly, feigning kindness. "That's easy. I have a nephew from my maiden family, an upright man, and he does not disdain repudiated women. When censor Jew arrives, you will tell him that you are already betrothed to my nephew. It will be a way out for you." The maid beside me looked up in disbelief. Everyone in the mansion knew the main wife's nephew was over 30, and extremely ugly. How could such a man be worthy of the legitimate eldest young lady of the Jiang clan? My father remained silent, acquiescing. Amidst this absurdity, I felt an unexpected calm. I could not help but wonder. For more than 10 years, I had never disobeyed my father, endured my stepmother's cruelty, and was renowned for my filial piety. Where had I gone wrong? How had I fallen to such a state? But events unfolded differently from everyone's expectations. Zhu Gutang had known my father intended to refuse the marriage, so he had brought a gift. According to the servants who attended the front hall, Zhu Gutang had smiled slowly at the time, opening the gift in front of my father and stepmother. Inside was the bloody tongue of my stepmother's nephew. He said, "This man actually dared to loudly proclaim that he would marry the eldest young lady of the Jiang clan, Jiang Zhaoxue. How absurd! Slander and ridicule, according to the laws of Great Wei, are punishable by tongue-cutting. Jiang Zhaoxue is my Zhu Gutang's unmarried wife. Anyone who touches her is opposing me. Grand Tutor Jiang, do you agree?" Even though my father had navigated the official world for many years, he had never witnessed such brutal, unflinching cruelty. My stepmother fainted on the spot. When she woke, she could not stop vomiting. After leaving the front hall, Zhu Gutang came to find me. I was painting. A long silk scroll spread out on the desk. Zhu Gutang stood by the window, casually placing a hairpin on the table, adorned with pearl flowers and kingfisher feathers. It was a hairpin I had last seen at a palace banquet, worn by the noble concubine, tribute from the southern kingdoms, extremely precious. I pressed my lips together, hesitating for a long time. My hand, holding the brush, tightened and loosened repeatedly. I looked at Zhu Gutang earnestly. "I have been repudiated." These simple 5 words stuck in my throat. I had lived my life with caution, making only this one mistake, yet it was enough to be fatal, enough to make me never hold my head high again. Zhu Gutang laughed, his gaze deep and dark. But I have only been repudiated." I took a deep breath, striving to keep my voice steady. "I was the top student at the Girls' Academy for 10 years. I have organized palace banquets for the noble concubine, and I always act appropriately. You will not need to worry about inner courtyard affairs. I will be a good wife. Marrying me was not such a bad idea. So, Zhu Gutang, will you not leave me here alone?" Zhu Gutang moved closer. My heart lifted instantly. Light fell on his face, like shattered gold. He slid the hairpin into my hair, wiping away the tear that had rolled down my cheek. "I know you are the finest young lady in the capital. As long as I, Zhu Gutang, am here, you will live the finest life imaginable," Zhu Gutang whispered, soothing me. "So stop crying." Just as no one had expected me to be repudiated by the Kui clan, no one had imagined that I, the most outstanding legitimate eldest daughter of the Jiang clan, would become betrothed to Zhu Gutang, the imperial court's notorious watchdog. Yet that was the truth. For a long time afterward, my father and stepmother avoided me, as if unwilling to recall the bloody scene they had witnessed that day. Only the old nanny who had raised me since childhood worried. "Censor Zhu is ruthless and terrifying. What if he treats you badly after you marry him?" I thought for a moment. "He won't." The nanny was surprised by my firmness. In truth, I simply felt that Zhu Gutang was not at all like what others described. He had not let me die of illness in the snow. I believed he was a man who kept his promises. At the very least, I was willing to believe it. Shortly after our engagement was settled, Zhu Guting handed over all his land deeds and shop contracts to me, declaring solemnly, "You'll take over sooner or later anyway." He also casually took a painting of soldiers washing their weapons from my desk. I was both annoyed and amused. Kui Jiao and I had been betrothed since infancy, yet we had met only 3 or 5 times over the years. Even when we did meet, we were so distant we could barely speak. I had never encountered someone as unreserved as Zhu Guting. It was not until I went out on the Lantern Festival that I learned what Zhu Guting had done with my painting. Chengde Tower, a place that only received princes and nobles, held a charity sale of paintings and calligraphy by girls from the academy every Lantern Festival. All proceeds were donated to the military payroll for the Northwest frontier. For women, this was an opportunity to enhance their reputation. Since I was 12, my paintings had always been snapped up as soon as they were displayed at Chengde Tower during the Lantern Festival. But this year, when my maid took my painting to the tower, the steward turned her away, dismissing me for having a bad reputation. They would not even let my painting enter. When the maid returned, she cried bitterly on my behalf, indignant at the humiliation. I had thought Zhu Guting would not notice such a trivial matter. To my surprise, he had set up a huge, magnificent lantern on a high platform opposite Chengde Tower. The moment I saw the lantern, I almost cried. My soldiers washing their weapons was printed on the lantern's surface, illuminated by the candlelight inside. The heavenly soldiers and generals seemed to come to life, golden spears and iron horses, full of heroic spirit. Everyone could see my painting. That was what Zhu Guting had intended. All passers-by stopped to admire it, captivated. Hardly anyone entered Chengde Tower, making the steward jump with anger. Princes and nobles flocked to inquire about the price. An old man in charge of the lantern on the platform raised his chin. "First-rate craftsmanship, first-rate lantern. My young lady's paintings are precious. She would not easily part with them if she did not care about the Northwest War. All proceeds will be donated to the Northwest Army. The price is 10,000 taels, no less." The crowd erupted in an uproar. Which young lady could paint such a bold, decisive battle scene? Which young lady dared to ask 10,000 taels for a painting? As soon as the old man finished speaking, the noble young men fell silent, all turning to look at a blue-robed youth standing in the center. He was as radiant as the blue moon in the sky. He had been quietly admiring the lantern for a long time, every stroke resonating with his heart. A faint joy stirred within him, especially when he heard the painter was a woman. It was like the beginning of all fated romances. "The Kui clan of Qinghe will buy this painting," Kui Jiao said, lowering his eyes. "May I ask which mansion the painter's young lady hails from? Kui Jiao wishes to meet her." I had never imagined that Kui Jiao would like this painting, yet I had painted it specifically for him, though he was the legitimate eldest son of the Kui clan. Kui Jiao had traveled extensively with his master since childhood, studying at academies in the Jiangnan region and the Northwest. He had spent little time in the capital. In the past 2 years, he had even gone to train in the Northwest Army. War was ruthless. The Kui clan's grand old lady had cried many times over this, eager for me to marry him as soon as I came of age to settle his wandering heart. But I had thought that military service was not such a bad thing. The rules and constraints of the capital had never bound Kui Jiao. He was so gentle and free-spirited, defying the Kui clan's wishes. I had spent months completing the soldiers washing their weapons painting, praying for his early triumph like a heavenly soldier, and for his wishes to be fulfilled. I had never expected that his letter of repudiation would arrive before I could give it to him. Yet after all the twists and turns, the painting had finally found its way to him. The old man on the platform had already pointed me out to Kui Jiao. Fortunately, I was wearing a veil. I turned and hurried away with my maid. Now, what was the point of meeting? It would only bring trouble to both of us. I had just stepped onto a stone bridge when Kui Jiao called out to me from behind. I hesitated to turn around. Kui Jiao had dared to act as an envoy at the age of 10, yet his voice was now hoarse. I am Kui Jiao of the Qinghe Kui clan. May I ask which mansion the young lady belongs to? And I wonder, are you betrothed? That was what he truly wanted to ask, knowing I could not avoid him. I finally turned around. At that moment, a peddler carrying lanterns passed by, and the corner of his lantern accidentally caught my veil, pulling it off. On the east wind, 1,000 trees of lanterns bloom, further blown, stars fall like rain. In that instant, I saw the admiration in Kui Jiao's eyes turn to shock as the bright lanterns passed by. I tucked my hands into my sleeves and said softly, "Young Master Kui, long time no see." Kui Jiao had always hated constraints more than anything. He had never imagined that fate would play such a cruel joke on him. He could never have guessed that the painting that had struck him at first sight was the work of his former fiancé, the one he had repudiated. He fell silent for a moment, then said, "I heard that the Girls' Academy has always displayed paintings at Chengde Tower. There seems to be a change this year." I looked at him quietly. It is not a change for the Academy. But for me, since being repudiated, I have been barred from the Academy and my paintings from Chengde Tower. I had no choice but to resort to this. Kui Jiao suddenly looked up, disbelief written all over his face. Having traveled the world since childhood, he had never realized that a single letter of repudiation from him in the capital could cut off all my paths. I struggled to hold back my tears. The betrothal from infancy was never your wish, I understand that. A woman like me is not to your liking, I know that. But Kui Jiao, have you ever thought about what I should do? They said the sons of the Kui clan cared for the world, achieving countless meritorious deeds. Yet he had never pitied me. I walked along the canal, where tourists released lanterns to drift with the current. The bright lanterns dazzled my eyes, and the fragrance of carriages filled the road. It was only later that I realized everyone was avoiding me. Glancing back, I saw that Zhu Gutang had been following me at a distance all along. Behind me, the lights were dim and flickering. He was still wearing his crimson official robe. No wonder everyone had taken a detour. I stopped in my tracks. Zhu Gutang smiled faintly. "I didn't think you'd notice me so soon." My maid was already so scared she could barely walk. According to rumors, whenever Zhu Gutang smiled like this, death was not far away. Yet I walked slowly toward him, looking up. "Thank you." 2 simple words. Thank you for rescuing me from suffering, sparing me from countless hardships. I still dared only to pull the hem of his robe. Zhu Gutang glanced down, then held out his hand, his large palm completely enclosing mine. He said lazily, "Jiang Zhaoxue, from now on. Hold here. Also, a thank you is not enough for me." Zhu Gutang's soldiers washing their weapons lantern became the talk of the capital for the next month. Even the Duke of Wei, a veteran of countless battles, praised the painting repeatedly. The talent of the Jiang clan's young lady spread throughout the capital once more. I even received an invitation to a banquet hosted by Princess Jialo. The princess held an exalted position. She had founded the Girls' Academy in her youth. Now a widow for many years, she had unexpectedly decided to hold a banquet again. All the noble ladies invited by Princess Jialo came from the top families in the capital. Yet I hesitated to go. I feared they would use my repudiation to humiliate me again. Zhu Gutang closed the file in his hand. Leaning against the window of the restaurant, he gazed at the gurgling river below. In recent days, I had been helping Zhu Gutang manage his shops, often coming here to review account books. When Zhu Gutang was not on duty, he would join me, listening to the wind rustle the willows. It was a peaceful life. I still held the princess's invitation. Torn, Zhu Gutang looked up. In this life, not everything can be perfect. Who hasn't had regrets? The repudiation was not your fault, Jiang Zhaoxue. There are things I can help you with, but there are others you must face alone. For some reason, his words felt familiar. But he was right. Sooner or later, I would have to return to the circle of noble ladies in the capital. Outside the window, the world was bustling. Only Ju Gutting stood by the window, the knife in his sleeve sheathed. He looked at me steadily. "Go without fear. This censor will have your back." The princess's banquet was a flower feast, held on Chiwu Mountain, 100 li outside the capital. But a pot of rare peonies I had carefully raised was deliberately smashed by my stepmother a few days before I left. When I arrived, all I saw were shards of the pot scattered across the ground. My stepmother stood nearby, her nail polish redder than the flowers. The on-duty maid was careless and broke the young lady's flowers. "She deserves to die." A maid knelt on the ground, wrongfully accused and weeping. I understood. My stepmother did not want me to attend the princess's flower feast and hoped to send my stepsister in my place. In the past, to maintain my reputation for filial piety and propriety, I would have endured in silence, but now, I refused to tolerate it any longer. I reached out and pushed my stepmother, just as she had made me kneel in the snow. She stumbled and fell onto the shards of the flower pot. Her entire hand was pierced, bleeding profusely. She looked up in disbelief. Was this really Jiang Zhaoxue, the most respectful and sensible daughter of the Jiang clan? I looked down at her and said softly, "I slipped. Please forgive me." An unexpected sense of relief surged within me. I should have done this long ago, but I still needed a suitable flower to bring to the feast. It was freezing cold, and even ordinary flowers were hard to find in the capital, let alone such a rare one. I sent a message to Ju Gutang, but did not hold out hope. He was so busy with official matters, how could he have time for such a trivial thing? By the day of the flower feast, I was already in the carriage, and there was still no news from him. It was an early snowy morning in the capital. Because Chiwu Mountain was so far outside the city, I had set off before dawn. The cold wind kept blowing through the gaps in the carriage curtain. Then, the sound of galloping horses echoed, particularly clear in the snow, lifting the curtain. I saw Ju Gutang reining in his horse beside the carriage, thin snow dusting his shoulders, his entire figure permeated with cold. From inside his large cloak, he carefully held out a sky-blue snow lotus, as translucent as jade. This snow lotus was rare in the world, often growing in dangerous places, and rarely seen by mortal eyes. I wondered how Ju Gutting had managed to find it. Lost for words, I could only stare up at him. The strong wind ruffled his frosty brows and eyes, and he concealed the bloodstains on his hands, cut by gravel. Ju Gutting said, "Remember to come back early, traveling 1,000 miles to find a flower, selling a painting for 10,000 taels." In the end, all he said was, "Come back early." It was my first time meeting Princess Jialo, a powerful figure long hailed as a model for women in Great Wei. She had been bedridden for a long time, rarely appearing in public. Not many people attended the banquet, but they were all prominent noble ladies of the capital. As soon as I stepped off the carriage, countless eyes turned to me, including those of the women who had mocked me when I was driven away from the girls' academy. Did the princess send the invitation to the wrong person? How could she invite someone who's been repudiated? What a magnificent soldiers washing their weapons lantern at the Lantern Festival. Some people still love seeking attention as much as they did at the academy. "Keep your voice down." She immediately latched onto Ju Gutting afterward. A repudiated woman and a lame young master, they're quite a match. Once, I would have endured this humiliation in silence, but I could not let Ju Gutting be dragged into it. Just as I was about to retort, a clear male voice spoke first. Such sharp, mean words. Kui Jiao stood in the snow, his eyes as dark as ink, his voice icy cold. "My aunt has ordered. Those who spoke mockingly just now are not allowed to attend the banquet. Please leave at once." As soon as he finished speaking, the faces of the noble ladies who had spoken paled instantly. Being dismissed at the banquet gate by the revered princess was no different from openly declaring they lacked virtue, no different from the humiliation I had suffered when I was driven away from the academy. My gaze fell on Kui Jiao. Only then did I remember that the princess was distantly related to the Kui clan. It was only fitting that Kui Jiao called her aunt. As I passed by Kui Jiao, I heard a faint whisper, "I'm sorry." If even an accidental encounter led to such mockery, what about the humiliation I endured when no one was watching? Kui Jiao dared not think. He was not a woman. He did not understand the hardships women faced. In that moment, he almost wanted to cry for me. Halfway through the banquet, the sky-blue snow lotus Ju Gutang had found for me undoubtedly won the highest praise. The princess summoned me to her side. It was my first time meeting her. I had grown up hearing stories of her, aspiring to become a woman of both virtue and talent like her. When I finally saw her, she had white hair and a weathered face. But her eyes were kind and gentle. She asked me questions about several books in the Academy's collection, and I answered each one fluently. Princess Jialo took my wrist. "My nephew Kui Jiao showed me your soldiers washing their weapons painting. I haven't seen a woman paint such an unconventional work in years." Her eyes sparkled. "Can you ride a horse?" A hush fell over the crowd. Although Princess Jialo had once fought alongside Emperor Gaozu on horseback, the noble ladies of the capital today wanted nothing to do with such martial pursuits. They preferred carriages pulled by donkeys, let alone learning to ride horses. Kui Jiao tried to intercede, calling out aunt, but I had already nodded, saying softly, "I can ride." Kui Jiao's gaze froze, lingering on me. The princess's interest was piqued. Fortunately, the snow had cleared, and there was a large racecourse on the mountain. My riding skills were only average, but surprisingly, Ju Gutang had recently urged me to practice every day, saying it would strengthen my health. I never thought it would come in handy now. The racecourse was vast, shrouded in mist. Riding here was not difficult, except for the occasional snowmelt stream that required a gentle leap. After completing a lap, I stopped right in front of Kui Jiao. He picked up the hair ribbon I had accidentally dropped. His heart pounding wildly, unable to recover for a long time, I dismounted, and an attendant took the horse. Kui Jiao's voice was hoarse with emotion. "I never imagined a noble young lady like you would know how to ride." I fell silent for a moment before saying, "In the spring of the 8th year of Yuanzhen, at your coming-of-age ceremony, you said you liked women who could ride horses." Kui Jiao had not lived in the capital in his youth. He had only returned for his coming-of-age ceremony. That was the first time I had seen him as a grown man, elegant and unrestrained, acting without convention. This was the fiancé I had waited for more than 10 years. I had always acted with utmost propriety, but after much effort, I had finally managed to speak to him after the ceremony. It was the boldest question I had ever asked. Summoning all my courage, I said, "Young Master Kui, what kind of woman do you like?" I knew Qin, Qi, Shu, Hua. I had gained the Kui clan's approval. I knew many things. I never expected him to glance up at me and say he liked girls who could ride horses. Although the answer was unexpected, it was not impossible. I had firmly believed that I could earn happiness through my own efforts. Watching Kui Jiao's stunned expression, I suddenly realized, Kui Jiao had only spoken casually. He had simply given the answer most likely to embarrass me. In an instant, Kui Jiao understood how deeply he had betrayed the joy of a young girl who had loved him for more than 10 years, even if he recommended me to the princess. Trying to restore my reputation, it was too late. That joy was gone, it would never return. Grief overwhelmed him, making it hard to stand. He had defied ancestral traditions, refusing the arranged official career. He had hated constraints, refusing to marry the wife chosen for him. He had longed to achieve great deeds, disliking the capital, eager to go to the Northwest Army. He had thought he was right. But life was long, could he really grasp everything? I reminded the princess of her younger self. She even personally took a handkerchief to wipe the fine sweat from my forehead, gentle and dignified, with great vision and perseverance. "This is the kind of woman I founded the Girls' Academy to nurture," she said. her eyes sweeping over Kui Zhao's dejected figure with a sigh. You should have called me aunt, just like Zhao. Youthful recklessness often led to decisions that could never be undone, the princess said. What if I take you as my disciple? My Qin skills have not yet found a successor. I looked up in surprise, meeting the princess's wise and clear eyes. She truly liked me and pitied my misfortune. The tides of fate had turned in just a winter and a spring. Months earlier, I had nearly died of illness in the snow because of the repudiation. Now, my luck had changed. Invitations to noble ladies' banquets poured in, too many to count. Even ordinary people in the capital knew of the Jiang clan's young lady, whose talent surpassed all others, so exceptional that even the princess had taken her as a closed-door disciple. Although her marriage had been unsuccessful, the repudiation now seemed insignificant. Street plays even depicted Kui Zhao of Qinghe as having long admired the Jiang clan's young lady, but reluctantly ending the engagement for fear of dying in battle. Otherwise, why would he have bought her lantern for 10,000 taels at the Lantern Festival? Opinions varied, but one thing was universally agreed: the Jiang young lady was perfect except for her current betrothal. Zhu Gutang, lame and cruel, was utterly unworthy of her. Gossip was not worth listening to. The princess personally intervened to reform the girls' academy, abolishing the rule that any woman who has been repudiated shall not enter the academy. Her health was poor, and she had to be supported by attendants, yet she still climbed the high platform where the academy held lectures. When I founded this academy, I hoped women would support one another. I never imagined that after decades, the world would become even harsher on women, she said. I have lived in seclusion for many years, so I did not know that so many women have been barred from the academy because of repudiation. Repudiation and lack of virtue are two entirely different things. If even the academy refuses to accept repudiated women, where else can they go? I still remembered that winter after the repudiation, when I had nearly died of illness in the snow. Fortunately, a hand had lifted me up, but how many women had not survived the winter of their repudiation? I waited for the academy's graduation ceremony in early summer. Originally, after the ceremony, the date of my marriage to Kui Zhao would have been set. No one could have predicted that I would marry Zhu Gutang instead, yet in recent days, I rarely saw him. Zhu Gutang seemed to be busy with a smuggling case in Jiangnan. I could not see him during my free time. The few chance encounters were on the street, where he galloped past, his crimson official robe fluttering like a butterfly. I would stop by the roadside as he raced by, never glancing sideways, never looking back, as if we were strangers passing by, as we had been long ago. Zhu Gutang had grown thinner. I heard it was a major case. He would leave the capital soon, with no certainty of his return. I thought that no matter what, I had to see him before he left, but I realized that our means of communication were surprisingly scarce. Perhaps he was too busy. The maid I sent to deliver a message never received a reply. I had no choice but to wake up early and wait for him outside his yamen. It was early morning in late spring, the sky just dawning, faintly shrouded in cold. After waiting for nearly an hour, I finally saw him emerge. Zhu Gutang had once been called the smiling Azura, but lately, his face was always cold as frost. Today was the day he planned to depart for Jiangnan to investigate the case. Zhu Gutang, he paused mid-motion as he mounted his horse, suddenly turning to look. Through the hazy mist and the quiet morning, his eyes found me at once. I went to the carriage to fetch the travel bag I had prepared for him. When I turned back, I saw Zhu Gutang striding toward me. He rarely walked in front of me. In his youth, Zhu Gutang had contracted a serious illness. However, his family fortune had declined, and they had mistakenly hired an incompetent doctor, leaving him with a permanent limp in his left leg. His gait was far from graceful, but now, he was walking toward me with unwavering resolve. I held back my tears and whispered, "Zhu Gutang, Remember to bring me lotus flowers from early summer in Jiangnan. I'll wait for you to come back. Come back soon. After Zhu Guting left for Jiangnan, troubles abounded, yet he wrote to tell me that on the whole, things were going smoothly, and he should be able to make it back for my girls' academy graduation ceremony. I waited with eager anticipation, until one day, a sudden restlessness stirred in my heart, followed by a suffocating tightness in my chest. Before long, news arrived. The ship carrying Zhu Guting north had been attacked by river bandits, capsized in the Yangtze River, and had vanished without a trace. Zhu Guting's trusted confidant in the capital delivered a letter to me, a letter he had written long ago, known as the Imperial Court's attack dog. Zhu Guting's handwriting was unexpectedly elegant and forceful, each stroke searing through the paper. He wrote, "In this life, not everything can be perfect. I have lived my days dancing on the edge of a knife. I have long anticipated the day I might meet my end. All my estates and loyal followers shall be entrusted to you. I hereby annul our marriage contract. You need not keep your
Kui Zhao's voice cracked as he spoke. The betrothal from infancy was never my wish. His hands, hidden in his sleeves, trembled uncontrollably. But a woman like you are the one I truly admire. He had once had the chance to marry the woman of his dreams, but he had been stubborn and willful. He had passed judgment on me without ever truly getting to know me. From that day onward, every night when the harsh winds howled across the northwest frontier, Kui Zhao would think of the young lady in the capital who had practiced horseback riding every day just to please him. The fact that he had never been able to marry her would haunt him for the rest of his life. I was going to beat the imperial drum of appeal. The drum was for those with grievances to make their voices heard, to be witnessed by the common people and reach the ears of the emperor himself. I intended to sue Grand Tutor Jiang and his second wife for attempting to murder their repudiated eldest daughter. No matter how weak my constitution was, I should never have deteriorated to the point of coughing up blood within days, nor should my health have failed to improve despite careful recuperation. The truth was that my stepmother had been secretly adding debilitating drugs to my meals every day. Suing one's own parents was considered the height of unfilial piety. After the academy graduation ceremony, my life could have been perfectly smooth and prosperous. Why would I ruin my reputation and destroy my bright future by doing such a thing? "Hey, young lady, what is it that you seek?" someone asked. I raised my head, my eyes clear and sharp as the glint of a blade. "I want to say that I refuse to accept this fate. I want to seek justice for myself. Nothing more, nothing less." The case was unprecedented. On the day of the trial, even the Empress and Princess Jialo were in attendance, along with a huge crowd of common people. My father had been a civil official all his life, dragged forward by his sniveling second wife. He had never been so humiliated. He pointed at me, his face livid with rage, and shouted, "The Jiang family should never have given birth to a daughter like you." I did not lower my head. Instead, I met his gaze calmly. Witnesses were not hard to find. The maids and servants of the mansion all came forward to testify on my behalf. On that snowy day in the first lunar month, the madam ordered the young lady to kneel in the courtyard, forbidding her to return to her room until midnight. When I went to fetch her, the snow on her shoulders was already an inch thick. The young lady was burning with such a high fever, but the master refused to let a doctor see her. He only thought she was a disgrace. I heard the master and madam saying that once the young lady died, they could seize the dowry left to her by her late mother. People from the madam's household were always sneaking around, adding things to the young lady's food and drink. The onlookers all wore expressions of disgust and contempt. My father's face turned bright red with anger. He let out a cold laugh and said, "These are nothing but the words of maids and servants, hardly worth listening to." The only thing missing was material evidence. My stepmother had long since hidden the incriminating drugs. Just as the trial reached an impasse, I heard the familiar jingle of a sword at someone's waist. I froze where I stood, overcome by a sudden shyness, like a traveler returning home after a long absence, afraid to look back. Then Zhu Guting's voice rang out as he handed a small pouch of medicine to the bailiff. "Here is the material evidence. A gasp of shock rippled through the crowd. Shock at a father's cruelty toward his own daughter, and shock at the sudden reappearance of Ju Gutang, who had been rumored to have died at the hands of river bandits. Princess Jalo had remained silent until this point, but now, with irrefutable evidence before her, she slammed her palm down on the table in fury and exclaimed, "A Grand Tutor of the Imperial Court, how could he be so petty and malicious? He is utterly unworthy of his position." The Empress frowned deeply, after a long pause. She spoke with imperial grace. "Miss Jiang, it seems you must be the one to dance the blessing dance at the year-end ceremony. To have cheated death and come through such a trial, if you are not a fortunate woman, then who is?" Her words all but sealed the verdict. Many of the onlookers that day were women, who could all empathize deeply with my plight. Public anger boiled over. The presiding official's forehead was covered in sweat. He repeatedly sought instructions from those seated above him before finally announcing his decision. Grand Tutor Jiang and his second wife, Zhong, are guilty of attempting to murder their eldest daughter. Their conduct is incompatible with their status. They are hereby dismissed from their positions and placed under arrest to await further judgment. I had never dared to hope for such a favorable outcome. The tension that had been coiled in my chest finally released, and I nearly collapsed. But a hand reached out to steady me. It was Ju Gutang's hand. I did not know how he had escaped the river bandits, nor how he had obtained the material evidence for me. All I saw was his travel-worn face, etched with exhaustion, yet his eyes still held that same lazy warmth they had carried that snowy night. I stared at him in a daze, afraid that he would vanish before my eyes. He held out his hand to me and said, stand up from the snow and cold of that night. Stand up from the constraints of a rigid and unforgiving world." Joy and tears welled up in my heart, mingling together. I took his hand, and from that day onward, we would never be parted again. After all, there once was a man named Gutang who had come like a ray of light to shine upon the snow.